This will be for the con exercise, limits of combined functions, products, and quotients. All right, so here we have functions f and h on the graph. They want us to find the limit as x approaches -1, f of x divided by h of x. So what you want to do here is find the quotient of the individual limits. So you find the limit as x approaches -1 of f of x and divide that by the limit as x approaches -1 of h of x. And of course, this denominator can't be 0. If it's 0, then the limit does not exist. So let's try it. All right, we're doing x approaches -1. So on this graph here, this is x equals -1. Okay, from this side here, as we approach -1, the y-coordinate is 0. And then from this side here, as we approach x equals -1, again, y equals 0. So on this one, it's going to be 0. Okay, then on this graph, here's -1. As x approaches -1 from the negative side, we are at this point, and that is -1. And then when we approach it from the other side, the positive side, we're right here. That's at y equals 2. So on this side, it does not exist. All right. Now, we have to do a second try, and that's for the one-sided limits. So first, we're going to do the quotient where x approaches -1 from the negative side. Okay, so we'll do that for both f of x and h of x. And then we're going to do the quotient where x approaches -1 from the positive side, f of x over h of x. And these have to match. These have to be equal. Otherwise, it's going to be DNE, does not exist. All right, so let's try the one-sided limits and divide and see if they match. Okay, x approaches -1 from the negative side. So we're looking at -1 in both cases. X equals -1. Okay, we're approaching from the negative side. So from this side, we end up right here, and it's at y equals 0. From this one, coming from the negative side, we end up right here. That's at -1. 0 divided by -1 is just 0. Let's try it from the positive side. We're coming from the positive x-axis. We end up right here at 0. Okay, now coming from the positive side, right here, we end up right here at y equals 2. Okay, and we basically have 0 divided by 2, which also equals 0. Okay, so the zeros match. The one-sided limits match, so the limit is 0, as long as we're not dividing by 0. Okay, again, we have our two functions graphed. We want to find the limit as x approaches 0, f of x times h of x. Okay, just like for the quotient, in order to find this, we want to find the individual limits as x approaches 0 for both f of x and h of x, and then just multiply them. All right, and if this doesn't work, we're going to go with the one-sided limits, just like we did when we were dividing. So we're going to x approaches 0 for both graphs. Let's see what happens. All right, x approaches 0. This is x equals 0 right here. So coming from the negative side, and we land on y equals 1. And from the positive side, we land on y equals 1. All right, so that's definitely a 1. And x approaches 0. Here's x equals 0 right here. From the negative side, we get 3. From the negative side, we get 3. From the positive side, we get 0. So for this graph, as x approaches 0, it's DN8. Okay, now we have to try the one-sided limits. So We're going to find the limit as x approaches 0 from the positive side of f of x and h of x and multiply them. That has to equal the limit as x approaches 0 from the negative side of f of x times h of x. All right, so one-sided limits, but they have to match. They have to be equal. All right, x approaches 0. We go to x equals 0 in both cases. Right there, x equals 0. Right there. From the negative side, coming from this side here, we land on 1. From the negative side, coming from this side here, we land on 3. 1 times 3 equals 3. From the positive side, going to x equals 0, right there, we land on 1. From the positive side, right there, we land on 0. 1 times 0 equals 0. Okay, so 3 and 0 do not match. Okay, so it's going to be D and E. Does not exist. All right, x approaches -1. Product, let's try it out. So we're going to x approaches -1. Here's x equals -1. X equals -1. All right. From this side, it's 2. And from this side, it's 2. X approaches -1. From this side, it's 4. And from this side, it's 4. Okay, never mind the fact that it jumps. We're looking at what it approaches. So 2 times 4 is 8. That's it. Luckily, we didn't get a does not exist, so we didn't have to do the one-sided limits individually. All right, h of x over g of x as x approaches 0. Let's check it out. X approaches 0. Here's x equals 0. Here's x equals 0. All right, from this side, the negative side, we land on the 4. From the positive side, we land on the 4. From the negative side, we land on 0. And from the positive side, we land on 0. You cannot divide by 0. So that does not exist. All right, so make sure on the quotient ones where you're dividing that you don't get a 0 in the denominator. Otherwise, it doesn't exist.